The hospital room was quiet except for the rain tapping against the windows. My daughter lay there with a bandage on her forehead, gripping Claire's hand and calling her mom like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze in the doorway, not sure if I was about to lose everything or if something bigger had just begun. I told my little girl we'd split the grilled cheese, even though I hadn't eaten since sunrise. Lily swung her heels under the booth, braid crooked, chin barely clearing the edge of the table. "Dad, you get dizzy when you don't eat," she whispered, like saying it too loud might embarrass me. I squeezed her hand and said, "You eat for both of us." Deal. Truth was, I had $5 in my wallet and a crumpled Kids Eat Free coupon in my back pocket. Our Thursday treat, running on hope and small print. The place wasn't fancy, just warm lights, soft jazz, and the steady clink of forks. I looked like I always do after a long day, paint on the cuffs, boots that tell on me even when I keep quiet. I ordered water for us both and the grilled cheese for her. That should have been the whole story. Then the server set down more than we asked for. Fries, a strawberry lemonade, even a little sundae that made Lily's eyes light up like Christmas. "You're tonight's lucky table," he said, smiling like it was routine. "House promotion." I nodded, but I let my eyes do a slow lap around the room. Folks don't usually hand you something for nothing. There's either a camera or a bill waiting in the wings. My gaze snagged on a woman in a cream coat near the corner. Calm posture, quiet eyes. She never looked over. Didn't need to. I already knew. After we ate, after Lily twirled herself dizzy on the sidewalk and licked the last of the vanilla from her spoon, I stepped back inside. "Evening," I said, stopping a respectful distance from the corner table. The woman looked up, steady as a level. I told her the truth. She didn't have to do that. She said the manager did. I gave a half laugh. "Sure, and I'm Santa." She didn't blink. She just said she didn't like the idea of a kid watching her dad not eat. That sat with me. I've carried drywall up 3 flights with a bad shoulder, but that line had weight to it. "Then thank you for not liking that," I said. We let the silence hang, clean, not awkward. She studied me a second and asked, "Do you always stand like the world can't break you?" I told her it can. I just don't show it where my kid can see. I tipped an invisible cap, an old habit from men who taught me work before talk, and went to catch up to Lily. We walked into the Denver mist, her hand wrapped around my finger, like always. I didn't catch the woman's name. Didn't need to, not yet. But the tight spot in my chest eased a notch, the way it does when the worst part of the storm finally passes and you can hear yourself breathe again. On the bus ride home, Lily leaned against me, warm and heavy, the kind of weight that makes a man feel stronger. She fell asleep before our stop, and I carried her the rest of the way, one arm under her legs, the other cupping the back of her head so nothing jostled. No cameras, no applause, just a dad, a Thursday night, and a tiny win I didn't have to explain. I told myself it was nothing more than a free meal from a kind stranger. But when I slid the key into our apartment door and felt Lily stir on my shoulder, I knew better. Sometimes help done quiet is the loudest thing in the room. And sometimes a moment you try to walk past ends up following you home. I told my little girl we'd split the grilled cheese, even though I hadn't eaten since sunrise. Lily swung her heels under the booth, braid crooked, chin barely clearing the edge of the table. "Dad, you get dizzy when you don't eat," she whispered, like saying it too loud might embarrass me. I squeezed her hand and said, "You eat for both of us." Deal. Truth was, I had $5 in my wallet and a crumpled Kids Eat Free coupon in my back pocket. Our Thursday treat, running on hope and small print. The place wasn't fancy, just warm lights, soft jazz, and the steady clink of forks. I looked like I always do after a long day, paint on the cuffs, boots that tell on me even when I keep quiet. I ordered water for us both and the grilled cheese for her. That should have been the whole story. Then the server set down more than we asked for. Fries, a strawberry lemonade, even a little sundae that made Lily's eyes light up like Christmas. "You're tonight's lucky table," he said, smiling like it was routine. "House promotion." I nodded, but I let my eyes do a slow lap around the room. Folks don't usually hand you something for nothing. There's either a camera or a bill waiting in the wings. My gaze snagged on a woman in a cream coat near the corner. Calm posture, quiet eyes. She never looked over. Didn't need to. I already knew. After we ate, After Lily twirled herself dizzy on the sidewalk and licked the last of the vanilla from her spoon, I stepped back inside. Evening, I said, stopping a respectful distance from the corner table. The woman looked up, steady as a level. I told her the truth. She didn't have to do that. She said the manager did. I gave a half laugh. Sure, and I'm Santa. She didn't blink. She just said she didn't like the idea of a kid watching her dad not eat. That sat with me. I've carried drywall up 3 flights with a bad shoulder, but that line had weight to it. Then thank you for not liking that, I said. We let the silence hang, clean, not awkward. She studied me a second and asked, do you always stand like the world can't break you? I told her it can. I just don't show it where my kid can see. I tipped an invisible cap, an old habit from men who taught me work before talk, and went to catch up to Lily. We walked into the Denver mist, her hand wrapped around my finger, like always. I didn't catch the woman's name. Didn't need to, not yet. But the tight spot in my chest eased a notch, the way it does when the worst part of the storm finally passes and you can hear yourself breathe again. On the bus ride home, Lily leaned against me, warm and heavy, the kind of weight that makes a man feel stronger. She fell asleep before our stop, and I carried her the rest of the way, one arm under her legs, the other cupping the back of her head so nothing jostled. No cameras, no applause, just a dad, a Thursday night, and a tiny win I didn't have to explain. I told myself it was nothing more than a free meal from a kind stranger. But when I slid the key into our apartment door and felt Lily stir on my shoulder, I knew better. Sometimes help done quiet is the loudest thing in the room. And sometimes a moment you try to walk past ends up following you home. I didn't expect to see her again, but the world has a way of circling back when you least want it to. A few days after that diner night, I was on my second shift unloading boxes when a buddy nudged me. Hey, man, you're famous. Some suit was asking around about you. I brushed it off. Nobody looks twice at a guy in a flannel covered in drywall dust. Turned out it wasn't a rumor. While I was killing myself trying to stretch one paycheck across 3 bills, she was sitting in a glass office tower watching footage of me carrying Lily home from the diner. I didn't know it at the time, but her assistant had pulled the security tapes. There I was on the screen, tired boots, worn jeans, my little girl asleep on my back. No stroller, no car, just me making sure her head didn't bump when I shifted her higher. I found out later she didn't say much while watching, just stared. Her name was Claire Rhodes, CEO of Rhodes Tech, the kind of company that makes headlines for numbers I can't even imagine. I should have known then this wasn't some random Good Samaritan. She wasn't just kind, she was calculating. Except, by all accounts, the calculation wasn't about profit. It was about me. Word is, she dug up everything. My day shifts, my night shifts, the story about my wife passing 3 years back, the part where I never missed a parent-teacher meeting. Folks called me a local legend, though all I ever did was show up. She closed her laptop slowly after hearing it all. Then she said something that would drag both of us out of the lanes we'd been running in. Schedule a meeting. We're launching the community program early. And add a new panel, something on resilient parenting, working class voices. When her assistant asked if she wanted me on it, she didn't answer right away. She just stood by the window, Denver's skyline glowing beneath her. Finally, she said, invite him. No spotlight, no pressure, just a seat. I didn't know any of this while it was happening. I was busy counting gas money and trying to patch a pair of boots with duct tape. But she was pulling threads from a past she never let anyone see. Because the truth is, Claire hadn't just been born into boardrooms. She grew up in foster care, shuffled around, invisible most of the time. She knew what it was like to be overlooked. That's why my kid's simple words, "Daddy, aren't you eating?" hit her like a wrecking ball. She could have ignored it, could have written it off as a soft moment in a hard week. But instead, she started rewriting her company's plans. Not for shareholders, for people like me who weren't supposed to sit at polished tables. And me? I had no idea my life was about to change because a stranger in an ivory coat couldn't shake the picture of a man carrying his daughter through the mist like the whole world depended on it. I was dragging pallets across a cold concrete floor when some kid in khakis walked up holding an envelope like it was made of glass. He didn't look like he belonged on a job site, and the guys around me sure noticed. "Delivery for Mr. Boone?" he asked, like he wasn't sure if I was the right man. I wiped my hands on my jeans, squinting at the thick cream paper. My name was written across the front in neat handwriting, No logo, no gimmicks. I almost laughed. Nobody writes my name on anything but overdue bills. Probably a mistake, I muttered. The intern shrugged. I was told to hand it to you. That's all I know. I set the hook down, tore the envelope open, and read the letter inside. Mr. Boone, your daughter reminded me what courage looks like. We'd be honored to have you both join us as our guests at the upcoming Community Voices Forum. Sincerely, Claire Rhodes. No titles, no corporate fluff, just her name. That night, after Lily crashed on the couch, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the letter like it was a trap. I've seen this before. Rich folks tossing bones to working men to make themselves feel better. A seat at the table usually comes with strings, and I've been tangled in enough to know better. I folded the letter in half, ready to throw it in the trash. Then a small voice came from the hallway. Was that from the pretty lady who bought us dinner? I turned. Lily stood there clutching her stuffed bear, curls wild, eyes sharper than I sometimes gave her credit for. She sent you a letter, she added. That's like magic, right? I gave a half smile. Not magic. More like confusing. She patted over in her socks, climbed into the chair across from me. You always say if something confuses you, maybe it's because you're supposed to learn from it. I rubbed my face. I say that. Yep. After you burned the toast and said the universe was teaching you patience. She wasn't wrong. Are you going to go? She asked. I shook my head. Not sure I belong in places like that. Did they say you weren't allowed? She shot back. No. Then maybe you do belong. Maybe they just forgot to invite people like you before. That landed like a brick to the chest. She was 6 years old, yet somehow she saw straighter than most grown men I know. Sunday morning, I pulled out the last shirt my wife had ever ironed for me. Pale blue, collar a little bent. Marie used to tap it flat before I walked out the door, as if the crease mattered more than the paycheck. I pressed it best I could with steam from the stove, shaved, cleaned under my nails. Lily hummed while she polished my boots. You look like a superhero going to a secret meeting, she said, eyes wide. I muttered, more like a construction worker playing dress up. She grinned. Same thing. When we stepped into the glass and steel tower downtown, I swear it felt like another planet. Lanyards, laptops, polished shoes everywhere. The receptionist's eyes flickered to my boots, then back up. I straightened my back and said, We're here for the Community Voices Forum. Her pause lasted just long enough to sting. Then she nodded. Conference room A. They're expecting you. And for the first time in a long while, I wondered if maybe Lily was right. Maybe I did belong, even if the world hadn't noticed yet. The conference room buzzed with the kind of polished noise I wasn't used to. Laptops clicking, folks in blazers laughing too loud at nothing, lattes balanced like trophies. I sat near the back, grateful for the distance. Lily beside me in her white cardigan with the little sunflowers her mom had sewn along the trim. She swung her feet, wide-eyed but calm, like she owned the place. Then a voice cut through the chatter. Mr. Boone. I looked up. Claire Rhodes stood there. No assistants, no cameras, just her in a simple blazer, hair pulled back, eyes direct. Lily's hand squeezed mine before she bolted over. You really wrote a letter? She asked, grinning. Claire crouched to her level, smiling for the first time I'd seen. I really meant every word. Then she glanced up at me. You showed up. I gave a short nod, only because someone shorter than me wouldn't take no for an answer. She smiled at that, then led us toward the seats. The program began with introductions and slides, all the corporate gloss I expected. But every so often, Claire's gaze flicked my way, steady and deliberate, like she meant every mention of quiet leadership and working-class wisdom. My stomach nodded. I didn't belong in a room like this. Not really. Then Lily disappeared from her chair. Before I could stop her, she was at the stage, tugging the microphone down to her height. My heart dropped into my boots. Why don't books ever write about dads like mine? She asked, voice small but clear. The room froze. Every head turned. Claire, standing off to the side, raised her hand gently, stopping me when I tried to get up. Let her finish, she whispered. Lily's eyes swept the front row of CEOs and reporters. They always write about kings or soldiers or rich people. But my dad wakes up at 5 every morning. He makes my lunch. He fixes buildings. He tells me stories so I'm not scared when it rains. And nobody writes about that. I stood now, heart pounding like a drum, half pride, half fear. Sweetheart, I started, but Claire shook her head again. Maybe they just don't see him. Lily continued, voice trembling but firm. But I do. Silence blanketed the room. Then, slowly, applause began, scattered at first, then swelling into something that filled the walls. Claire stepped forward, adjusted the mic, and spoke. I had a whole speech prepared about innovation and inclusion, she said, her voice even but full. But tonight, I think we just heard something far more important. She turned toward me. Mr. Boone, would you join us up here? I froze. I hadn't prepared for this. My shirt was ironed, sure, but I wasn't made for stages. Lily's smile steadied me, whispering without words, "You've got this, Dad." So I walked, boots loud against the polished floor, every step deliberate. Claire handed me the mic, our fingers brushing, and I gripped it tighter than I meant to. I don't have a lot to say. I began, my voice rough. And I sure don't belong on stages. A ripple of chuckles eased the tension. I continued, but maybe that's the problem. I never asked to be seen. I just wanted to do right by my kid, pay my bills, keep my promises. You know, the usual things no one writes headlines about. I paused, my throat tight, eyes dropping to Lily. My wife used to say dignity doesn't feed the stomach, but it feeds the soul. I didn't get it until she got sick and the bills piled higher than hope. Since then, I've just tried to keep showing up, cracked hands and all. No pity, no praise. Just showing up. I handed the mic back, met Claire's eyes for the first time that night. She didn't smile, didn't posture. She looked moved, like someone had held up a mirror she wasn't ready for. The applause roared this time, rising like a wave I didn't know how to ride. People stood, some even wiping their eyes. And for once, I didn't feel like an intruder. I felt seen. After the forum ended, the crowd thinned out, but my nerves didn't. I found myself standing near the back doors, paper cup of lukewarm water in my hand, staring at the city lights through a narrow window. I was trying to breathe normal again, but my chest still felt like it had been cracked open. "You didn't want to speak," came a voice at my side. I turned. Claire Rhodes. Blazer still on, but her heels were off, sitting abandoned by a chair. She looked less like a billionaire and more like a tired woman at the end of a long day. I admitted. Lily did. Claire smiled faintly. Well, she changed the night. I let out a breath. I'm not sure what it was supposed to mean. Felt like I was just trying not to embarrass her. She stepped closer, her voice low, different from the one she used on stage. It was supposed to be a keynote from one of my executives. Instead, it became the first time in years a room like that remembered what real courage looks like. I studied her, skeptical. You really believe that? I do, she said steady. And not just because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. That made me frown. What do you mean? You didn't use your moment to shame anyone. You didn't beg. You didn't try to sell anything. You just showed up. That's rare. I looked back at the skyline, lights twinkling like they didn't know half the city's heroes wore boots caked with dust. I didn't plan any of it. I was just trying to keep my daughter proud of me. She's not embarrassed, Claire said softly. She's proud. And so am I. That last line stuck. I turned, really looked at her now. Hair pulled back, suit wrinkled, eyes sharper than they needed to be. For the first time, she didn't look like the untouchable name I'd read about in business pages. She looked like someone trying to remember who she was before the world told her to win at all costs. Mr. Boone, she said carefully, I want to ask you something. Not as a CEO, not as a favor, just as a woman who saw something rare tonight. I didn't speak. I let her keep going. I'm starting a program, she said. No PR tricks, no buzzwords. It's called Her First Spoon, for kids who've never had a meal served with dignity. I need someone to help shape it from the ground up. Someone who knows hunger of the body, but also hunger of the spirit. I blinked. I'm no expert. Good, she replied without missing a beat. Experts build systems. I need someone who builds trust. I folded my arms, skeptical. So you're offering me a job? I'm offering you a seat at the table, she said simply. I looked over at Lily, who was across the room trying to balance a muffin on her nose and laughing at herself. Then back at Claire. Well, I said quietly, guess I'd better learn which fork to use first. Her smile was small, but real. I think you already know the only one that matters. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me that wasn't fear or duty. It was purpose, and it scared me almost as much as it thrilled me. The call came on a gray Thursday, middle of my shift. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then a woman's voice cut through the noise of forklifts and shouting foremen. This is the school nurse. I need to inform you that your daughter, Lily Boone, slipped on the wet floor outside the music room. We've contacted her father, but since you're listed as an emergency contact, my heart dropped. By the time I made it across town, rain soaking through my shirt, I was already late. When I pushed through the ER doors, I expected to see Lily scared and asking for me. Instead, I froze. Through the glass, I saw Claire sitting on the edge of Lily's bed, feeding her jello, murmuring something that made my daughter giggle. Lily's forehead had a cartoon bandage plastered across it, cheeks pink, eyes bright. She wasn't scared. She was safe. And she was calling her Mom Claire. I didn't walk in. My boots carried me back outside, under the awning where the rain hammered down harder than my heartbeat. 15 minutes later, Claire found me there, coat clutched tight around her. "Why didn't you come in?" she asked. I stared at the parking lot, at the blur of headlights through the storm. "I heard her," I finally said. "She called you Mom Claire." Her lips parted, surprised. It was instinct. She was scared. I shook my head. No, she wasn't scared. She was safe. That's why she said it. Claire studied me, her eyes softening. "And that's bad." Jaw clenched, I finally looked at her. "What happens if this, whatever this is between us, doesn't last? What happens when you go back to your world and we go back to ours?" Lily doesn't need another person walking out of her life. Her voice sharpened. "You think I'd do that?" "I think everyone leaves eventually," I said, the words raw. "Especially the ones who shine brightest. They always burn out fastest." She stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair. "You said yourself you chose legacy. So why run now?" "Because I'm scared," I snapped before I could stop myself. "Because I've built this fragile world for my daughter out of bedtime stories and spare change. And now there's you, a woman who lives in skyscrapers, who signs checks that could buy my whole life twice over. And still, she called you Mom." My throat caught. You know what Lily told me once? That it was okay if we didn't have a mom. That maybe we were just the kind of people who grow stronger alone. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. "But she doesn't believe that anymore, does she?" I shook my head, rain blurring my vision. "No, and that terrifies me." Then Claire did something I never saw coming. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded paper, and handed it to me. I opened it with shaking hands. It was Lily's handwriting, wobbly but clear. "Dear Miss Claire, thank you for staying with me. I know I only have one mom in heaven, but if I had to pick someone to stand in that spot, I'd want it to be you." I pressed the letter to my chest, my throat burning. "I don't know how to give her everything she needs," I whispered. "You already do," Claire said gently. "You show up. You kneel down. You listen. That's more than half the world ever learns to do." I closed my eyes, letting the storm soak me. Claire's voice cut through the rain, softer than I'd ever heard it. "You told me once ashes can't fix anything. But what if this? What if we're not ashes? What if we're what rises after?" For once, I didn't fight it. I let the rain come, inside and out. And I knew this wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about me daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, we weren't meant to be alone forever. The days after the hospital blurred into one long stretch of going through the motions. I packed Lily's lunch, braided her hair crooked, folded her favorite socks, but my smile was gone, and she noticed. She stopped singing at breakfast. She stopped asking for bedtime stories. She started watching me like she was waiting for something I didn't know how to give. Then one afternoon, sitting on a crate at the job site, I reached into my lunchbox and pulled out something that wasn't mine. Pink paper, folded small. Crayon drawing of a stick-figure dad, a little girl, and a woman with long hair. Above them, in shaky handwriting, "Dear Daddy, you once told me that brave means doing the hard thing, even when your hands are shaking. I think maybe your hands are shaking now. So I'm writing this to help you be brave. You always make me feel like I matter, like I'm enough. Maybe it's time someone made you feel that way too. If you still believe what you always teach me, that love is the best kind of courage, then come to table 7 tonight. Love always, Lily." I read it 3 times before the words even sank in. My sandwich sat untouched. My hands, cracked, calloused, cement dust ground into every crease, shook more than they had in years. That night, 6:43 p.m., I pushed through the diner door. Same chime, same smell of frying onions. My heart slammed against my ribs like I was walking into battle. At table 7, Claire was already there, hands folded, eyes searching. For a second, I almost turned around. Then the bell chimed again behind me, and I realized it was me she was waiting for. "You came," she said, voice steady but softer than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, sitting across from her. Because Lily reminded me what bravery looks like. I set something wrapped in cloth on the table between us. She reached out carefully, unwrapped it, and gasped. A simple wooden spoon, rough but smooth from years of use. "This was the first thing I made after Marie passed," I said, my voice low. Lily was too little to eat with metal utensils. We couldn't afford much, so I carved her a spoon out of scrap wood. I figured if I couldn't give her the world, I could at least give her something from my own hands. Claire ran her fingers over the grooves. "You kept it all this time?" I nodded. "Not because it's perfect, because it stayed. Through every move, every storm, every job. It stayed." I looked her in the eye for the first time without flinching. "If you're looking for someone polished, that's not me. I've got debts, scars, things I can't fix. But if you want someone who holds tight to what matters, someone who doesn't drop what he loves even when his hands are shaking, then I'm here. I'm all in." Her throat tightened. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "Do you know why I chose this table the first night I saw you?" I shook my head. "Because it was near the window. I thought I wanted light. But maybe what I saw that night was something brighter." I turned my palm up across the table. "Then let's stop running from it." She placed her hand in mine. No speeches, no boardrooms, no cameras. Just two people sitting at table 7, a wooden spoon between us like a promise carved out of grief and sanded down by love. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was bracing for loss. I felt like I was finally ready to stay. A month later, the three of us walked into a ballroom lit brighter than any job site I'd ever worked. The launch of her first spoon was polished to the bone. Cameras flashing, tables set with flowers I couldn't pronounce. But right in the middle of it all, under the glass of a shadow box, sat my old wooden spoon. Not polished, not altered, just as I'd carved it with shaking hands years ago. The plaque at the base read, "For the hands that never dropped the spoon." Claire took the stage in an emerald dress that didn't need sparkle. She already carried enough of that herself. She began her speech not with stock prices or polished lines, but with me. "Exactly 1 year ago," she said, "I saw a father walk into a diner with $5 in his pocket and everything that mattered in his arms. He didn't ask for help. He didn't posture. He simply protected the dignity of his child with every quiet choice he made." The room stilled. For once, people weren't scrolling their phones or whispering over wine. They were listening. To her. To us. And then, before I could stop her, Lily marched right up to the stage. She climbed onto the little stool someone scrambled to find, leaned into the mic, and said, "My name is Lily Boone. I used to think rich people didn't cry. But then I saw Miss Claire cry good tears when I called her mom once. My dad always told me we were a team, just him and me. But now we're three. 3 chairs, 1 table. That's all you need for a family." The applause hit like thunder. Not polite, not staged, real. Claire knelt, hugged Lily tight, and whispered something I couldn't hear. My chest ached in the best way, because for once my little girl wasn't just surviving. She was shining. Later that night, when the city lights blinked like quiet applause, I stood on the rooftop terrace with a lukewarm cup of coffee. Claire joined me, heels dangling from her hand. She looked out at Denver and said, "I thought I built everything I wanted. Turns out I just built walls." I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my jacket and handed her a folded letter. I'd written it days before, afraid I'd never say it right out loud. She read it silently. "You saw me when I was trying not to be seen. You honored my silence. You stood beside me, not in front of me. That's all I ever needed." She folded it back, eyes shimmering, and took my hand. "I see you, Jack Boone. All of you. And I'm not going anywhere." I believed her, not because of her words, but because she'd already stayed when I expected her to leave. A few weeks later, her kitchen smelled of pancakes and laughter. 3 chairs around the table, 1 bowl of fruit, 2 mismatched coffee mugs, Lily giggling with peanut butter on her nose, me flipping pancakes like they were gold coins, Claire reading headlines out loud, mocking them until all 3 of us laughed. And in the center of the table, framed in a tiny box, sat that wooden spoon. Still rough, still simple, still perfect. It wasn't wealth that changed us. It wasn't speeches or programs or cameras. It was dignity, courage, and love carved into something ordinary until it became unforgettable. And maybe that's all it takes. One wooden spoon, one steady hand, and someone who refuses to give up, even when life gives you every reason to.